The Ratings of Rescu. In the civilized regions of known space, people liked to pretend that danger could be scheduled. They liked disasters at a safe remove, heroism with proper lighting, and romance that had first been approved by marketing teams. Entire planetary economies, especially among the older media worlds of humanity, revolved around this elegant lie. It was therefore unsurprising that Jace Marrin had become one of the most beloved men in broadcast. He was handsome in the loose, healthy, unmistakably human way that no amount of asteroid gene polish could imitate. He had the easy shoulders and unbothered grin of a man who had grown up under one gravity, one weather system, and one sky that occasionally tried to kill him with lightning, flood, wildfire, or all three by lunch. He was from Earth, a do-not-approach world, in the blunt galactic shorthand, and that meant that on most civilized planets he wore a polite restraint frame over his clothes, a tastefully tailored exoskeleton, so he would not accidentally break furniture, embarrass dignitaries, or terrify catering staff. The frame looked elegant on camera. That was no accident. This, Jace said, turning toward camera 3 with a gleam that suggested he personally welcomed the existence of a viewing audience, is the part of the program where I ask the galaxy's brightest star the questions all her fans are dying to know. Across from him, reclining in a crescent-backed chair of polished pulwood, Lyris Vale laughed in the way only a woman trained since adolescence to bend rooms around her could laugh. She was not human. She was Varelian, though most audiences no longer remembered that. They remembered only the eyes, large, liquid dark, reflecting light like deep water, and the elegant sensory crest swept back from her skull like living art. Her skin glowed faintly sea green beneath the studio illumination. Every movement she made suggested calm, intelligence, and a frankly dangerous degree of charm. "And what," Lyris asked, "is that question, Jace?" Jace leaned forward, one hand over his heart. "Are the rumors true that you refused to perform the final kiss scene in Moonfire Harbor until the director replaced the male lead's cologne because it smelled, and I quote, like an elderly diplomat hiding fruit?" The studio audience erupted. Lyris slapped a hand over her mouth, then pointed at him. "First of all, that quote was private. So it was true? It was partially true," she said, with a dignity already collapsing into laughter. The fragrance had notes of fermented rind. "I stand by the artistic objection." "You hear that?" Jace said to the camera. "This is why she's great. Standards." The audience cheered. Ratings were already surging. Somewhere in a control booth, producers were mouthing silent prayers of gratitude to every god, algorithm, and advertiser in the spiral arm. Later, in the biopic of this entire story, the foreboding music in a minor key would play. Jace did not play himself. Not enough range, judged the studio executives. From the back of the studio, 3 figures in formal service gray moved through a side access corridor carrying what appeared to be equipment canisters. Security registered them, dismissed them, moved on. The station had layered scanners, good scanners. But pirates who could afford an illicit matter beam insertion rig could also afford a forged service path and a thermal cloak. Back in the studio, Lyris crossed one long leg over the other. "My turn," she said. "Tell me, Jace Marrin, is it true that your producer keeps a secret tally of how many times you go off script each episode?" Jace widened his eyes. "Producer betrayal. Live on air. You all saw it," he says, Lyris went on, "that you are incapable of following a prepared segment if a prettier, louder, or more explosive possibility appears. I reject that slander. Also, flexibility is one of my strengths. You once interviewed a Brindlefolk admiral and ended up helping him test a confetti torpedo on stage," Lyris said. "It was for journalism, and at the time, I was signing a deal to premiere in Brindlefolk space. It was for ratings." Jace grinned. "What isn't for ratings?" The first bomb went off beneath the stage. Not a huge one. Whoever planted it had wanted confusion, not total station breach. The flooring heaved. The audience screamed. One camera cart toppled sideways in a shriek of metal. Jace's restraint frame flashed warnings across his wrist display as shockwaves punched through the deck. Lyris vanished in a column of pale, blue matter beam light. There was time for Jace to see her expression change, to surprise, then fury, before the second blast tore open the front edge of the set. Most humans would have died in that moment, or at least collected enough shattered bone to make the next few months dull. But Earth had made Jace Marrin the way DNA worlds made everything. Redundantly, stubbornly, and with very little regard for polite galactic expectations. He moved before conscious thought finished forming. The stage was lifting, splitting, dropping. He shoved his chair aside, ducked under a collapsing segment of flooring, and slammed shoulder first through a maintenance hatch hidden under the set trim. The lower cavity was barely large enough for storage bins and wiring trunks. He folded into it as debris crashed overhead. The world became sparks, dust, heat, and the thunder of celebrity equipment dying expensive deaths. When the emergency lights came on, Jace was half buried under insulation foam and one very offended studio drone. He coughed. "I need," he told nobody in particular, a better contract. Later. For the next 36 hours, the galaxy did what it did best. It watched. Every channel carried the blast. Every feed replayed the moment Lyris Vale dissolved into stolen beam light. Every analysis stream speculated about culprits, motives, insurance implications, and whether Jace Marrin had looked heroic enough crawling from the wreckage. He had. He knew this because he watched the clip privately 3 times and concluded that yes, from a certain angle, the soot on his jawline was extremely effective. Publicly, he was incandescent with outrage. "They took her," he said on a special emergency broadcast, standing in front of the shattered remains of his set. "They took an artist, a guest, a woman who came onto my show in good faith, one of the brightest stars in our constellation, and they think they can vanish into some hole in the stars and negotiate from there? No, they cannot." His producers, in the adjacent control room, were openly weeping with joy at the audience numbers. Privately, Jace sat in his dressing room with a fracture patch on his ribs, sipping electrolyte broth, and stared at the incoming figures. "These numbers are obscene," he said gleefully. His executive producer, Mara Chin, did not even try to hide her smile. "Your grief is testing off the charts. I'm actually upset. Yes. Which is helping. I feel bad that that's helping." "Do you?" Mara asked. Jace considered. "Not enough to stop." She laughed. "Then you're a professional." When Lyris Vale's manager arrived, she came with lawyers, private security, and the air of a woman who had once strangled a budget committee with eye contact alone. His name was Sel Aner, and he was Astery. Silver-skinned, perfectly poised, every motion measured. His distress, like all strong Astery emotion, showed in micro-fractures of control. 2 extra blinks, a stillness too absolute. Fingers held a fraction too tightly together. He did not sit. "The kidnappers have issued terms," Sel said. "Ransom?" Mara asked. "A performance ransom," Sel said. "And money. Mostly money." Jace leaned back. "What's the catch?" Sel looked directly at him. "They want the ransom delivered in person by you." Mara made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. "That is spectacularly stupid." "They believe," said the security chief beside her, a broad-shouldered human named Tavin Rusk, "that because Mr. Marrin wears a powered frame, his reputation is mostly theatrical. They assume he is useful as publicity leverage and physically manageable." Jace looked down at his restraint frame. "That is unflattering." "It is also an opportunity," Sel said. "Deliver the ransom. Recover Ms. Vale. You will receive a substantial fee, first position publicity, rights to the rescue, and, should she be agreeable after recovery, a featured role in her next film." Jace stared. "A speaking role?" he asked. Sel's expression did not change. "Yes." Mara slapped the table. "You're doing it." Tavin set a small projector onto the dressing table. The image of a broken moon appeared above it, ringed with junk habitats and dark-running ships. Pirate den embedded in an old mining complex on the moon, Kepri Steppe. The moon hosts a colony of outcasts and drifters, outside any civilized jurisdiction. Also a mixed-species crew, not top-tier operators, but numerous. Their leader styles himself a king, which is always useful. Means ego. Means habits. Jace stood. You're all talking like this is happening. Cell looked at him with serene, astry precision. You said on broadcast that they could not vanish into some hole in the stars and negotiate from there. Public rhetoric, Jace said. A dramatic form. Cell's eyes sharpened by a millimeter. Will you go? And there, because the universe enjoys balance, the man who had privately delighted in his ratings found himself in the unpleasant presence of his own better self. He thought of Lyris's laugh. He thought of the abrupt beam flash and her face vanishing in it. He thought of entire galaxies full of people who performed concern because it sold. Then he exhaled. Yes, he said, but if I die, I want it noted that I had objections. Later, a FTL ship loaded with cast and crew, union representatives, and legal experts arrived at Kepler's Step. Kepler's Step was an ugly little moon with a mostly notable for a long, abandoned mining operation in a tiny town called No Expectations. Its gravity was mild enough that most humans found it delightful and most Varelians found it nauseating. The pirate complex had once been a deep mineral extraction array and now resembled what happened when greed inherited industrial architecture and started decorating with guns. Jace arrived in a shuttle full of ransom crates, cameras, and people who claimed they were not there for a spectacle and were lying so hard it should have counted as propulsion. He wore civilian clothes under the restraint exoskeleton, a dark jacket, field boots, and the polished public smile of a man who had decided terror should not get the last word. Tavin adjusted the frame's shoulder locks. Reminder, on this moon, you are approximately 3 times stronger and significantly faster than local baseline. The boots contain matter clamps to normalize your gait. I know what the boots do. Yesterday you kicked a cargo hatch off because you forgot. It was flimsy. It was armored. Jace glanced toward the forward hatch. How bad is it? Tavin considered him. You want the tactical answer or the morale answer? Morale. Bad. Thank you. Cell entered from the rear cabin, crisp as geometry. He wore a fitted travel coat and carried a data wand like it had personally offended him. I have one final instruction. Jace turned. Bring her back, Cell said, and for the first time the strain beneath his control was plainly visible. Not because of contracts or films or revenue streams. Bring her back because she is kind when no one is watching, and because fame is a terrible shield against loneliness, and because she deserves more life than this. Jace's expression softened. You love her. Cell went very still. Tavin looked abruptly interested in the ceiling. At length Cell said, I manage her. That was a no. The faintest crack appeared in his composure. Bring her back, Mr. Marrin. He nodded. I will. Later, Jace, followed by a cameraman and a drone operator, walked to meet a clot of waiting pirates. They were at the entryway to what had once been an open pit mine. Their king called himself Vorik Splint, and he was the kind of man who would have chosen a cape if nature had not burdened him with enough vanity already. He was huge, plated in scavenged armor, his species difficult to identify beneath implants and bad decisions. He welcomed Jace with exaggerated warmth. The famous man himself, the talking human. I expected more bodyguards. I brought the money, Jace said. Bodyguards would suggest mistrust. Vorik barked a laugh. Good, good. You understand theater. Oh, said Jace, glancing around at the torchlit scrap banners and armed sentries. I very much do. The pirates took the ransom, cryptocurrency data storage crystals contained in a briefcase. A legal expert seemed offended that Vorik refused to sign a receipt. Then, because no self-respecting den of criminals could resist turning events into entertainment, Vorik announced that the human would first prove his seriousness in the arena. I'm not a fighter, Jace objected. Also, I don't like her that much. Cell and Tavin, at the same time, dragged him away. You will do what it takes, Cell said, eyebrows riding high and fierce on his perfect forehead. We won't kill you, boyo, Vorik called out. We just want to show the normies that their pretty boy is no hero. We'll even let you video it. Fine, Jace called out. I've got full medical benefits. Your machine stays here, Vorik said, pointing to the exoskeleton. No hidden power. Jace's smile faltered. Well, I know. The pirates roared with amusement. Vorik spread his arms. Afraid? Yes, Jace said honestly. For your insurance prospects. That only made them louder. Tavin, held back by 4 rifles and a profound awareness of how messy diplomacy had become, caught Jace's eye across the docking hall. Don't. Jace gave him a small, helpless shrug. He removed the restraint frame and followed the pirates into the arena, which had been a staging area for the pit mine a long time ago. The restraint structure folded away from his body with a series of polite chimes, like a butler resigning in protest. Jace rolled his shoulders, inhaled, and immediately looked more dangerous. It was subtle at first. A looseness, a shift in balance. The same man suddenly inhabited more completely. Vorik did not notice. The first arena fighter came at Jace with a weighted spear and a lot of confidence. Jace stepped aside and accidentally sent him into a wall hard enough to bend decorative plating. The second fighter lasted 6 seconds. The third was smarter. She circled, watched, adjusted, and nearly clipped his knee with a chain blade. Jace grimaced. "I'm sorry," he said. "I hope we can still be friends." "Friends," she snapped. "What are you talking about?" "I'm from Earth," he said, and caught the chain mid-swing. "Our recreation standards are confusing." He spun, disarmed her, and dropped the weapon before it could slash back into the audience. She hit the sand, blinking up at him. Jace offered a hand. "You all right?" She stared, then took it. She walked away in a huff. The crowd had gone strangely quiet. Vorik rose halfway from his throne box. Again, but now they understood. The machine had not given the human power. It had hidden it. By the time Jace left the arena, battered but upright, half the pirates were looking at him with terror, a quarter with admiration, and the remainder with the speculative excitement of people wondering if they could sell interview rights. The cameraman gave Jace a thumbs up. This footage was gold. The next stop was the treasure room. The crypto haul needed to be deposited. And at this point, Vorik wanted to show off his ill-gotten gains to the entire galaxy. The treasure room was, to Jace's eye, a crime against both aesthetics and accounting. Credits stacked in magnetic bars. Stolen art. Cases of illicit astery crystal work. Antique navigation compasses from old human expansion fleets. Varelian memory shells. Brindlefolk ceremonial cannons that probably fired glitter or soup. Jace stood in the center of it all while pirates watched from the door. 2 drones and a cameraman were covering him from all the angles. "This," he whispered reverently to the lens, "is where bad taste goes to retire." He panned the feed slowly. If you're at home right now, and I know millions of you are, understand that every object in this chamber is the result of theft, grief, and astonishingly poor display instincts. No labels. No thematic arrangement. This urn is beside contraband plasma lace. One of the pirates frowned. "What's wrong with that?" "Everything." He moved toward a vault pillar, holding the camera rig higher. The equipment pack on his back hummed, searching for signal pathways through the pirate-dampening field. "Lyris Vale," he said into the recorder, softer now. "If you ever watch this later, I want it known that I came into a treasure room for you and only got distracted briefly." The camera uplink found a resonance band. The room answered. Security fields, old mining lasers repurposed by idiots, fed back through the broadcast carrier. Light went white. Every surface in the vault screamed as overlapping containment systems failed simultaneously. Jace blinked once. "Oh," he said. The vault exploded. Not in a fireball exactly. More in a catastrophic economic bloom. Credits, jewels, antique coins, shattered display cases, ceremonial blades, glass, sculpture fragments, and one deeply offended tax ledger burst upward through the roof in a geyser of wealth visible for kilometers. Outside, on the broken moon's thin horizon, pirates stopped mid-patrol as treasure rained down over miles of dust plain like the galaxy's least responsible festival. Jace stumbled from the smoke cloud, coughing and covered in currency. Tavin arrived at a sprint. "What did you do?" Jace spat out a gem. "Investigative journalism. Later, you may have a hand at fisticuffs," Vorik said as they all walked deeper into the mining complex. "But my boys are still going to make you work for the lady's release." The prison complex sat beyond an open yard cut into the mining stone. Floodlights tracked, every angle. Gun emplacements covered a killing field. Somewhere inside was Lyris Vale, unless she had already been moved. Vorik's pirates shouted for barricades. Someone fired a warning shot. Someone else started filming. "We won't shoot you up," Vorik shouted. "Well, maybe just a little." Tavin crouched behind a fractured cargo barrier with Jace and two of Cell's security officers. "We can't cross this cleanly. There's no tunnel. Collapsed." Jace looked at the open yard. "Too wide. Too exposed. I'm not up for this. I mean, at this time." Cell shook his head. "Lyris is counting on you." Jace gave him a sour look. Then he looked down at his boots. Matter clamps, polite little gravity cheats, designed to make his step weightier, slower, less alarming. Good for dinner parties. Good for not clearing staircases in one bound. Not good for this. He dropped to one knee and unlatched them. Tavin's eyes widened. "Jace." The boots hit the ground like dropped anchors. Jace straightened, suddenly taller somehow, lighter on his feet, the moon's weak pull no longer disguised. "I'll open the door when I get there," he said. "Serpentine," Cell said. He waved his hand in a snaking motion. "Serpentine." Jace stared at him. "That is not a plan. You got anything better?" Then he ran. Drones followed him. The cameraman wisely hung back. To the gun crews on the walls, it looked like a camera trick. 1 second the human was crouched behind cover. The next he crossed half the yard in a blur of impossible acceleration, bounding over craters, slamming off broken stone, changing direction with DNA world reflexes that no predictive targeting model had bothered to include. Shots scorched behind him. One clipped his sleeve. Another carved sparks from the ground where his head had been a moment earlier. He laughed, a startled, exhilarated sound dragged out of him by movement and danger and the ferocious joy of being, at last, useful for something other than applause. He hit the prison door with both hands, seized the edge of its half-cycled seam, and tore it open enough for the servos to shriek in despair. Inside, pirates screamed. Jace plunged through. What followed later became difficult to recount accurately, because witnesses disagreed on nearly every detail except one. He absolutely should not have been that fast. He disarmed one guard with the guard's own rifle. He vaulted a rail, rebounded from a wall, and landed in the center of 3 more. He ducked a shock baton and headbutted an ambitious pirate so hard the locker apologized with sound. By the time Tavin and the others followed behind him, Corridor 7 was full of unconscious pirates, and Jace was asking a capture guard, quite politely, which way to the VIP cells. "Down," the pirate whimpered, pointing. Later, Lyris Vale's chamber was not a cell. It was an apartment. The door slid open on soft music, warm lights, scented air, and a sitting room strewn with cushions. There were refreshments, silk hangings, a carved shell fountain. 2 pirates in serving aprons backed away in alarm as Jace entered. Lyris reclined on a daybed in a shimmering robe, reading from a handheld script display. She looked up. He froze. She blinked once, twice, then smiled in mild surprise. "Jace!" He stared at the fruit tray, then at the fountain, then at her. "What is this?" "My room." "Your prison room?" "Yes. This is nicer than my apartment." She set down the script. "That's a little sad." Jace put his hands on his hips. "You were kidnapped." "Yes. We blew up a vault." "I heard. I crossed a live fire yard." "Very brave." He pointed to the nearest pirate attendant. "Why is he carrying tea?" "Because I asked for tea." The attendant, visibly offended, said, "It is very good tea." Jace looked as if the universe had betrayed him personally. "Lyris, I am here to rescue you." She sat up, graceful as tidewater and about as immovable. "That's very sweet. I don't wish to be rescued." "What?" She gestured around. "Do you know the last 6 years of my life have been premieres, interviews, image consultations, dietary structures, performance contracts, and carefully scheduled vulnerability? Here, people adore me, bring me pastries, and let me sleep. They kidnapped you." "They did. It was rude. We worked through that." From behind him, Tavin arrived, saw the room, and closed his eyes. Cell entered a heartbeat later. Lyris stood. For a moment the room changed. Whatever strange holiday atmosphere had settled over the pirate's suite vanished beneath a silence that belonged only to the two of them facing one another. Cell, all controlled Silver Ake. Lyris, suddenly not performing at all. I came for you, Cell said. Yes, Lyris answered softly. You should not have had to. No, Lyris said. But you did. Jace, to his credit, understood when to stop talking. He stepped back. Cell's composure frayed visibly now. You cannot stay here. Lyris's expression grew tender. I know. Then why? Because for 4 days, Lyris said, no one wanted anything from me except stories and company. Because those idiots out there, she waved at the pirate base beyond the walls, are sentimental fools with terrible criminal instincts. Because they kidnapped me for leverage and then discovered I know contract law, negotiation psychology, and 6 dessert recipes. Because I was tired. Cell swallowed. And because, Lyris finished, if I left too quickly, I would have to go back to a life in which the one person I most wanted to stay never said what he felt. The room, which had recently contained explosives, pirates, and a human-shaped siege engine, now became much more dangerous. Cell took one measured breath. I did not say it, he said, each word precise from long habit. Because your life is watched by millions, and mine is built on control, and I could not bear to become another pressure on you. Lyris stepped closer. You were the only pressure I ever wanted. Cell laughed once, helplessly, and that was the beginning of the end of his restraint. He crossed the room and took Lyris's hands. Their foreheads touched. The gesture was small. It was devastating. Jace looked at Tavin and mouthed, I rescued a romance. Tavin mouthed back, please stop helping. Vorik chose that moment to storm in with a half-dozen guards and the expression of a man whose evening had spiraled beyond management. No one leaves, he thundered. Jace sighed. I was worried there wouldn't be a final act. Vorik leveled a weapon. The star stays. She likes it here. Lyris drew herself up. Vorik, I have enjoyed our discussions. Your chefs have improved. Your interior design remains criminal. But I am leaving. Vorik looked honestly wounded. We were going to start a cultural salon. You held me for ransom. A profitable salon. Jace took a step forward. Here's the thing, Vorik. You're bad at kidnapping. Vorik snarled. I am a king. No, came a new voice from the door. You are content. Everyone turned. In the corridor beyond stood a being made of facets, dim light shifting inside semi-crystalline planes. It was vaguely humanoid only because the room expected bodies to have heads and shoulders. 2 more forms unfolded behind it. Then 3, their surfaces whispering as if glass had learned to think. The Carvax. Silence fell like a blade. Even the pirates knew the stories. Worlds rewritten into lattice. Populations absorbed into optimization grids. The end of chaos at the cost of self. The lead Carvax inclined its shard-like head. This installation exhibits inefficient hierarchy, unstable resource control, and emotional volatility. It will be corrected. Vorik's bravado collapsed instantly. Fire. The pirates opened up. Bolts splashed against crystalline fields and vanished into reconfigured matter. Tavin cursed. Why here? Because, Cell said quietly, horror sharpening her voice, the treasure explosion exposed the site to deep spectrum survey. Jace grimaced. That's on me. The Carvax moved forward. Then the universe, still in a charitable mood, sent help in the least modaliable form possible. Overhead, a ship slammed into the exterior docking clamp with enough force to ring the station hull like a bell. Over comms came an exuberant voice. Attention, hostile optimization geometry. This sector is now under the noble protection of the Brindlefolk Civic Defense Flotilla. Tavin stared upward. That cannot be real. The cameraman was focusing on the oddly shaped Brindlefolk ship. The drones were getting reaction shots. A second voice, likely from the same ship, shouted, "Launch the celebratory countermeasures." Glitter cannons fired through the breached outer hull. The Carvax paused. Every predictive model they possessed, every recursive probability tree, failed in a bright cloud of metallic sparkle and shrieking Brindlefolk anthem music. Jace burst out laughing. Charge! And suddenly everyone did. Pirates, security, hostages, lovers, and one overqualified talk show host surged together through the confusion. Lyris hurled a serving tray into a Carvax sensor cluster. Cell used a compact field disruptor with terrifying competence. Tavin physically dragged Vorik to safety when a collapsing support beam tried to flatten him, because even professionals have inconvenient ethics. The Brindlefolk boarding party arrived wearing mismatched armor and expressions of heroic certainty. One of them saluted Jace. "We came," she said proudly, "because your live emergency feed accidentally broadcast pirate coordinates, and we reasoned that if danger was occurring publicly, it was definitely our jurisdiction." "You are magnificent," Jace told her. "I know." Together, through luck, noise, courage, and the sort of improvisation that makes historians drink, they forced the Carvax nodes back into the unstable beam shaft created by the shattered vault relay. Cell and Lyris synchronized the detonation timing. Tavin overloaded the corridor seals. Jace seized the lead Carvax bodily and hurled it into the collapsing field with enough force to make the station lights dim in sympathy. Then they ran for the docks as the pirate den shook itself apart around them. Later, the galaxy adored the story. It adored every impossible, contradictory part. The handsome human broadcaster who had gone from outrage to action. The beloved movie star who had all but unionized her captors. The silver-skinned manager who had crossed space for love and accidentally made the confession of the year. The pirate crew who, when later processed through actual legal scrutiny, were found guilty of numerous crimes, but also suddenly in demand for serialized holodrama adaptations. The Brindlefolk, who signed 3 endorsement deals and 1 strategic defense treaty before anyone could stop them. Vorik Splint himself sold his life rights to a prestige limited series titled King of Kepperstep, though critics agreed he was miscast as more competent than reality allowed. Lyris and Cell withdrew from the spotlight briefly, then returned on their own terms, together, unmistakably together, to the delight of billions. And Jace Marrin? He went back to his show. At first, the ratings were astronomical. The Rescue special became the most watched live human broadcast in 32 years. Producers offered him bigger contracts, bolder sets, sponsorships, even a line of branded restraint frames. But something in him had shifted. Helping people, it turned out, had a flavor no applause could imitate. Not cleaner, not simpler, just truer. On the first episode of his new season, Jace walked onto the rebuilt stage, sat down, and looked directly into camera one. "I've spent years asking dramatic questions from safe chairs," he said. "Recently, I discovered that if you stand up and walk toward the problem, things get messier, scarier, and occasionally much more expensive. But they also become real." The audience, sensing something unusual, went quiet. "So the show is changing," he continued. "We're still doing interviews. We're still doing culture, scandal, food, cinema, politics, and the occasional regrettable Brindlefolk demonstration. But we're also doing something else. We're going where the trouble is. We're bringing cameras, yes, because transparency matters and because I know what business I'm in. But we are also bringing aid, advocates, negotiators, and, when necessary, one extremely annoyed human from a DNA world." The audience rose as one. Backstage, Marachin muttered, stunned, "He's done it again." Tavin, now inexplicably retained as head of field operations, folded his arms. "I told you not to let him grow as a person." In the front row, Lyris Vale laughed openly while Cell, beside her, allowed herself the smallest proud smile. Jace spread his hands to the crowd. "What can I say? I found I like rescue. And because the universe occasionally rewards people for stumbling into decency with all the grace of a falling cargo hauler, it was true. He still liked ratings. He still liked attention. He still liked the bright, absurd machinery of fame. But now, mixed in with all that, there was something sturdier. Responsibility, perhaps. Purpose, almost certainly. And somewhere beneath both, the first mature shape of honor. The galaxy watched. This time, for once, it was not entirely the wrong thing to do.